edition. So then this is where it gets even weirder. So they fired Monster Games abruptly, and then 704 Games was like abruptly taken over by this company called Motorsport Games, who took over the series and then hyped up this next game called NASCAR 21 Ignition. Like they hyped it up as they were finally gonna like actually do a whole lot. Like it was gonna be.
Bubba.
It was The cover was Bubba Wallace, Chase Elliott, and Ryan.
Sorry, I just love the name Bubba.
Hey, it's his name.
Yep.
They're probably three of the most popular drivers in the sport right now. But unfortunately, this game's a hot pile of garbage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like there's a lot of rumors that Motorsport Games is secretly a scam.
Oh,
like,
really?
Yeah, they fraud, like a whole bunch of fraud going on and stuff. I don't know enough about it to really say anymore, but I've seen a lot of really weird reports around the company.
Yep.
And this game was a hot garbage, and they still have done nothing to fix it.
Oh, wow.
Hey guys, I'm Bill, also known as the Barbecue Games on Instagram.
And I'm Alex, his sister, who brings only chaos.
And together we are the Gaming and Collecting Podcast, a mostly video game centered podcast.
But half the time, we just talk about anime.
And that collecting thing, well, that's mostly just an implication at best.
So come along and enjoy us on this adventure
as we discuss the games that shaped us. And how you been? She's already ruined this take like 4 times. Let's just go. See how it goes.
I'm sorry. I just didn't think it would be that funny. But it was.
She ruined the last like 3 takes of this, so at this point I don't care anymore. We're just going. So, how you been?
Good. I had a short week.
Yeah, this must have been nice.
At work, I took Thursday and Friday off. My mom and I went to Foxwoods, and it was our first time at a casino. We saw The Masked Singer live. It was the weirdest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Well, you went to see The Masked Singer, so is that really surprising?
Yeah. But the backstory is it's my mom's favorite show. She loves it. She adores it. It brings her joy. So we went to see them live, and it was basically just Natasha Bedingfield, which is a singer from like the 2000s, who kind of disappeared and was on the show. But then like they just had these really bad versions of the costumes from the show, these really bad knockoffs, and they were just lip singing the whole time. So it wasn't even the only person who was actually singing was Natasha Bedingfield, and the rest were just like awkwardly standing in front of a mic, slightly moving because they're in these heavy costumes. It was the stupidest shit we've ever seen. But the best part was they had like this celebrity, air quotes, that was like, that they unmasked like at the event. And they unmask him, and everyone just goes, "Who the fuck is that?" Like, literally a guy behind us screamed that. And it was just crickets when they announced who he was. I guess he was a contestant on The Bachelorette or something, but oh my god, it was the funniest thing ever. And we also went on a zip line there. It was very high in the air, and I thought I peed myself. I was at the end of the zip line, and I was like, oh my god, I think I peed my pants. But
Lovely.
I didn't.
Well,
I didn't
Well, you were
myself.
doing that. I was cat sitting.
Yeah. Miss Tilly. You love Tilly.
Yeah, but it was a rough week at work, so.
Yeah. But Tilly.
Yeah.
You fed the Tillard.
And then today was a disaster on all fronts.
Oh my god, yeah. Today was like, nothing went well, so we got up, left. We did.
Granted, so to date this recording is Father's Day.
Yes. We didn't think about that.
Shout out to our dad.
Yes.
I doubt he'll listen to this, but shout out to him anyways.
Happy Father's Day, Dad. Happy day, Dad. Dad. Yay.
Yeah. But yeah, so we tried going to breakfast this morning, and the first place we went had a 50-minute wait. So we
Yep.
said, nope. The second place we went we literally stood there and nobody like said anything for like 3 minutes, 3 to like 5 minutes. So we were just kind of like, all right, and like the little hallway we were shoved in just kept getting fuller and fuller. So eventually we just said fuck it and just left. And then we noticed like 3 other people left right after us.
Yeah.
And then the final place we tried to go was an hour wait.
Yep.
And we just said, nope. So we just went to the local coffee place and just got sandwiches.
Yeah. But they were good sandwiches, and the coffee there is always great, so it was fine.
It was just one of those things where it's like, wow, nothing's going right this morning.
Oh, yeah. And then we wanted to go on a hike, so we were looking at places, and we were like, oh, this looks fun. And we go and start the hike, and we're like, oh, this is nice. It was, like, nice and paved. We keep going, the pavement goes away, and we're like, oh, okay, not as nice. And then it just turns into, like, tall grass, and we were like, no, ticks are bad right now. Let's not do that.
Yeah. So then we just walked around a random shopping mall, and we rescued a bird. That was funny.
Yeah.
I almost stepped on it. That was like, oh.
Well, he was just, like, in the middle of the sidewalk, and Bill just almost stepped in. He was like, whoa, bird.
Yeah, this bird, like, wasn't moving. Like, we were, like, up poking it, and it wouldn't move.
Well, I didn't want to touch it with my hands, but I was like, I don't know if it's hurt or something, so I took a little wood chip to kind of try and push him at least, like, if he was hurt towards, like, the flower bed, so no one would step on him. So I was trying to move him, and then, like, eventually, like, another couple, like this couple came by, and was, like, passing us, and then they were, like, I think the bird got startled.
And he flew off.
But, like, people were, like, slowing down to see what we were doing. It's just me trying to push.
Nudging a bird with a stick to get it out of the road.
Well, I felt bad because, like, Bill almost stepped on him, and I felt like he was, like, I don't know what he was doing, but he flew away. So
well, I was walking, and I looked down, and I just all of a sudden saw this thing twitching. I was like, whoa. And then I was like, that's a bird. We were like, is it alive? And it was, like, moving. But he wasn't going anywhere. He was just sitting in the middle of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
It was like, okay.
I didn't want to touch him, but, like, literally, I think I probably could have pet him. You know, realistically, I probably could have. But he ended up flying away when, like, a couple passed us, so.
Well, there was a lady walking a dog, and I really wanted to make sure we got him out of there before the dog came by.
Yeah.
Because dogs are a little friendly sometimes, and I didn't want the dog to, like, eat the bird.
Yeah. No, sometimes they will.
Yeah.
But bird is okay. We saved the bird.
As far as we know. He
Well,
didn't get stepped on our watch.
Yeah, he didn't get stepped on our watch, so hopefully he doesn't get stepped on. But I'm just glad he was okay. He wasn't, like, hurt or anything, to our knowledge, at least.
Then we ordered food and got alcohol. So honestly, what are you drinking now that we say that?
Oh yeah, I got this. I got an imported cider. It's I don't know how to say this. It's a Swedish cider. It's like Rekorderlig. Rekorderlig?
Yes.
I'm probably butchering that, but it's a premium Swedish hard cider, and it's pear, and it's pretty good. It's imported. I like it. I think it's pretty good. Would get again.
Yeah, and I'm drinking a Cayman Jack Cuban mojito.
Woo!
Because I bought a pack of those and I'm finishing them, so.
Yes.
But anyways, I guess getting into our topic now. So this one's a bit more heavily based on our nostalgia and our childhood growing up. So everybody knows about sports games. They're everywhere.
Yep.
And they're a yearly thing for the most part.
Yep.
Now, we grew up, we weren't big stick and ball sport people.
Yep.
I mean, football was on all the time back in the day. That was really the only sport that was recurringly in our house back in the day.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you won't ever see football on, but...
Unless it's college.
Yeah, but the one sport, though, that we did watch, like, routinely in our family was auto racing, particularly NASCAR.
Yep.
And so we grew up pretty much always exposed to NASCAR, because I was the one that introduced the family to NASCAR, because little child saw race cars on the screen, and I was directed at the rainbow colored one that was leading up most of the races at the time, and I became enamored with Jeff Gordon at the time. Yep. And I introduced the family to it, and from there on it was kind of like we started an obsession. And then Alex, having to be the opposite of me, became a Dale Earnhardt fan. Because, of course, she did. But yeah, so we've been watching auto racing pretty religiously since then. I know our mother's more of like an F1 fan these days, but we still all watch pretty much every racing series there is, particularly like open wheel and stock car racing. And it's been such a huge part of us growing up. Like, we went to like old NASCAR races back in the day. Like, we saw a ton of them. Like, we've been to Bristol, Tennessee, North Carolina. I've been to Richmond. I've been up to like the Watkins Glen Road Course in New York. Just seeing all these different tracks. And I mean, I've been trying to see more. It's not the easiest. Logistically, it's tough sometimes. Yeah. But, so getting into like sporting games, every sport has their video game tie-ins. Like, it's a recurring thing. And NASCAR is no exception. And NASCAR video games have always been interesting because NASCAR, I think, out of all video games, has had one of the most up and down, like, histories with the series. Yep. Like, NASCAR games have been really good, but they've also been really shit for like the longest time. And I think that's mostly just because they've never really been able to hold a developer for a long period of time. Oh, really? And unlike other sports, NASCAR changes its rules so freaking much. It's like really hard for developers to like keep up with like the changes, because it's not like other sports where you're really just changing rosters. In NASCAR, they change car numbers, manufacturers, body types, sponsors, like how the car's race has changed over the years. And honestly, I think that's made it more difficult for different developers to keep up. Yeah. So NASCAR games, honestly, I was surprised how early. The earliest NASCAR game was in 1984, believe it or not. Okay. And it was Richard Petty's Talladega. It was only released for old 8-bit, the Atari 8-bit computer and the Commodore 64. Oh, damn. And it was very old school styled. Like, it was one of those racing games that it wasn't even really a NASCAR licensed game. It was mostly just Richard Petty signed off. And I'm not even sure if Richard Petty's car was even in the game. But that one is pretty hard to come by, obviously, these days, because it's obviously only an old PC game that you can probably emulate if you really wanted to play it, but why would you? Yeah. Now, after that, funny part is we still don't have an official NASCAR game at this point, because the next quote-unquote NASCAR game, and keep in mind, these are the simulation games, like, that actually tried to be realistic. The next one we got was Days of Thunder, based off of the 1990 film of the same name. Oh, okay. And this one was developed by
Mindscape Group.
So Mindscape was the publisher. The version
Argonaut Software.
So Argonaut developed a couple. The version I know was developed by Beam Software, believe it or not. Oh, okay. For the NES. There was also a Game Boy Color version, I believe Argonaut developed. This game's not very good. I won't lie. It tried to do 3D, which was kind of cool, but I mean, the NES was just not the best system for these games. Yep. I actually have that boxed, like an actual NES box. Oh, really? Which is kind of cool. Well, because one of my goals as a collector has been to collect every NASCAR game boxed. Yep. And I've been getting pretty far. Nice. But after that, now this is the first officially NASCAR licensed game. So this was Bill Elliott's NASCAR Challenge, and Bill Elliott was the most popular driver at the time.
In 1991.
Yes, and this game was... So it was 1991, and it actually, interestingly, came with a free waiver to possibly win a ticket to the 1992 Daytona 500.
Oh, that's funny.
Which my copy actually has still.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I have a mint copy that still has like all the stuff in it.
Have you opened it?
Nope.
I wonder, what if like you have the winning one?
Oh boy, I can go to the 1992 Daytona 500.
I mean, I wonder if you like tried to redeem it and be like, look, can I just go today since I technically won? Like, I wonder if they never found it and you just secretly have the winning one.
I doubt it, but
that'd be funny.
The game itself is so it's an 8-bit racing game. The PC one had polygons somewhat, but the NES one was strictly 2D. I mean, it's an old school racer, not very spectacular. It was the first NASCAR game though that had NASCAR licensing, so that was
And then like the title.
yeah, which was something. I actually found this box to like mint at a Bowser's Basement of all places.
Oh, nice.
And it did have a Game Boy Color, quote unquote, counterpart, which
Yeah.
was not the same game, but it was similar. It's called Bill Elliott's NASCAR Fast Tracks, released for the original Game Boy, also in 1991. I also found that boxed,
Nice.
but that game's even less playable.
Oh no.
See, I have those like sealed, and I'm not gonna bother opening them
Yep.
because they're just not worth. They're not worth really opening. They're more just collector's items at this point. But then moving on, now we get to one of the more important NASCAR games. We get NASCAR Racing
Yep.
for the PC, developed famously by Papyrus Design Group.
They made quite a few when I'm looking down.
Yeah, Papyrus made many NASCAR racing games. They also made a lot of racing games in general.
Yeah,
And-
that's what their logo says, Papyrus Racing Games.
Yes, they eventually became that. And the NASCAR Racing one was like the first real like distinct one. Like it used like full 3D polygons.
Oh, they're located in Watertown, Massachusetts.
They were located in Watertown,
Yeah,
Massachusetts.
they were based there.
They don't exist anymore. But,
Oh. Well, that was neat. Well, they were alive.
so NASCAR Racing was like the first real quote unquote sim of the series, and it had so there was a few notable absences in the game, like Dale Earnhardt wasn't in it for some reason.
Oh.
Neither was Dale Jarrett, Kyle Petty, or Darrell Waltrip.
Do you think it was probably licensed?
It was definitely licensing at the time. That would come up later on too, because they probably had deals signed with other people at the time.
Yeah.
But what made NASCAR racing so popular was its realism at the time. The game was also notoriously difficult to get running on a PC, from what I remember, because I had this game back in the day, and we could never get it to work.
It was on your blue TV.
The Hot Wheels PC. Yeah.
The Hot Wheels PC.
Yeah. We could. This game was a bitch to get to run. Like we never could get it to work.
I think I remember that. I remember you always going, dang it, or something like that.
It just wouldn't run. Apparently, though, that was just a notable thing.
Yeah.
It was also released for the PlayStation, which is how I played it years later.
Huh.
But moving on from that, then we get to another not technically NASCAR game. Kyle Petty's No Fear Racing for the Super Nintendo. And this was basically just a generic stock car racer that they got Kyle Petty to endorse. It's kind of cool because it's like an SNES racer.
Yep.
It's the closest thing to an SNES NASCAR
Pick
game.
such a goony picture of him.
That's what he looked like back in the day.
Well, he looked goony.
He had like the long hair, and he was
I'm
like.
not even saying that. Like his face, he's like.
I like the fact that they got Kyle Petty's likeness like license, but they couldn't get Mellow Yellow license, so it's like stripped from his car, even though it's clearly the Mellow Yellow car.
Oh, that's funny.
But after that one, then we get NASCAR Racing 2,
Yep.
which I also had, and it also did not work.
Oh, but they got the Dale Earnhardt sponsorship this time.
Well, they got Dale Earnhardt to sign on this time, which I'm assuming meant that his rights were available at the time. This one I remember looked better and played better, but it was basically the same game inherently.
Yeah.
Because they basically, the thing with a lot of the early NASCAR games is they had because NASCAR's rules didn't change nearly as much back in the day, they had a lot easier of a time converting the cars to the actual game.
Yeah.
Because then following that, now we get EA's first entry into the NASCAR game world with NASCAR Racing 98. This was
NASCAR 98.
Or NASCAR 98, yeah. And this one was developed by Stormfront Studios, who were, I believe, also named Beyond Software. They were owned by EA, I believe. And this game I always remember because this was like the first of like the EA Sports era. And it was released for the PlayStation and Saturn, and it had Molly Hatchet's Burnin' for Disaster, I believe, was the main theme.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was super catchy, like memorable. Had a ton of real life tracks, like real life driver appear. Like it was one of the better looking games at the time.
Yep.
It played pretty good too. Like I remember it being a pretty decent game at the time. And it was basically the definitive console version of the series. And then following that, we got EA's second game, NASCAR 99. NASCAR 99 was basically a continuation of what 98 was, obviously. It was the typical EA, like, every game, yearly release, doesn't change much.
Yep.
99 was not...
Updated car design. It's basically kind of like DLC.
Sort of.
Yeah.
It's more just a yearly sports game.
Yeah.
Now, 99 wasn't as well received. It was also the first one to release for N64. I think it didn't play...
Ugh.
Yeah.
No wonder.
It didn't play as well as... And a lot of the graphic... so the thing was, like, it really didn't improve much from 98, which is, I think, the reason why a lot of people don't like 99 much.
Yeah.
And following that, we got NASCAR Racing 1999 edition, which was essentially just an update of NASCAR Racing 2.
Yeah.
And there's not much known about this one other than it kind of just existed.
Yeah. Like, there's not even a picture on the Wikipedia page.
And what's funny, though, is... So at this point, EA made the majority of the console games, and NASCAR Papyrus would make the PC versions.
Yeah.
But then EA decided they also wanted to make PC games, so they made NASCAR Revolution, which interestingly had Dale Earnhardt on the cover, which they were really trying to push... Dale Earnhardt was the face of the sport at the time. It was either him or Jeff Gordon.
Yeah.
So you'd see a lot of either Dale or Jeff on the cover.
And there's Mark Martin and Kyle Petty, too.
Yeah. Well, Kyle Petty you'd see a lot at this point because he was driving the Hot Wheels car at the time, which was very iconic. And Mark was like a classic that everyone knew.
That was Dad's driver, right?
Yeah, Dad liked Mark. And ironically, this game did not do nearly as well as Papyrus's games.
No.
No. Like, there isn't even like a good gameplay feature on Wikipedia. It just kind of is like, yeah, this one existed.
It does have the reception tab, though.
Yeah, and it's not positive.
No.
So then following that, we got NASCAR Racing 3, which was once again a continuation of the NASCAR Racing style, only now with updated cars and rosters. We added some different drivers, and overall, still incredibly well received. A lot of people like to point out the realism of these games. Like, Papyrus really... Like, they made IndyCar games, too, like F1 games. They really mastered that sense of realism at the time. And basically, they just improved the graphics. Then next we get NASCAR 2000. Now, this one I remember fondly, because this was one of the ones that we had. And this one came out on N64, PlayStation, PC, and Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Color port is hilarious, because it's so like trying to be way more than it actually is. So this one was better than 99 because they did actually improve the graphics a good degree and the gameplay. The N64 version was kind of crap. I will admit the PlayStation version is really the way to go.
Yep.
And then there was also NASCAR Legends, which was another PC game.
Cora. Also, no picture.
Yeah,
There's barely any data on.
Yeah, Papyrus released a lot. This one, I feel like these were more expansions than anything.
Yeah.
Because then following that, we get NASCAR 2001, which was the first
PlayStation 2?
PlayStation 2 game, but it also came out on PS1. And that would be a thing you'd see with NASCAR games. This one notably... So this one came out in 2001, but like most sports games, it's actually based off the 2000 season.
Yeah.
And this one notably featured tributes to Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin Jr., who died during the season.
Oh.
So this game features them as playable drivers with tributes. Yeah, this one wasn't particularly well received either.
No.
The first the jump to PS1 wasn't graceful.
No.
It wasn't very graceful at all.
Womp womp.
But following that, we get so now we get a third.
You need PS2? Jump to PS2?
Yeah, the jump to PS2 wasn't particularly graceful. But so here's another interesting one. So now we get a third entrant, like a third contestant into the ring of NASCAR developers, and this time we get NASCAR Heat, which was developed for PC and PlayStation, along with Game Boy Color, but the Game Boy Color port is irrelevant.
Yeah.
This one was developed by Monster Games. And Monster Games was notable. So this one was interesting because it was notably better received than EA's offerings at the time.
Yeah.
Even though the game itself really wasn't that much better.
Well, it's interesting looking at the reception because it actually was perceived better on the PC versus the PlayStation.
So the game was the Monster Games only developed the PC version.
Oh, okay.
It was later brought over to the PlayStation by Digital Illusion. No, not Digital. It was by the company that's now known as DICE, which is ironically an EA studio now.
Oh.
It was ported over to that, and the port wasn't as well received. It's still playable. I've played the PlayStation version. It's perfectly fine. But Heat would end up being a new entrance into the league, because at this point there was no exclusive developer. Like anyone could make a NASCAR game as long as they got the license.
Yeah.
Because this was then followed up by NASCAR Racing 4.
It's so funny how there's like 6 different like NASCAR brands of games. Like, so weird.
Well, it's funny because we'll see how like the series gets really confusing as it goes on. Because NASCAR Racing 4 also by Papyrus. You'll notice though, like EA is pretty standard that you're doing yearly releases. Papyrus was doing their numbered releases with occasional spin-offs, and then Heat was the new entry, and they all had their specific naming convention. But you'll notice EA starts to get a little weird as we go on, because I guess we'll say Racing 4 was very well received. Like 89% on Metacritic was pretty good.
Wow.
And then that was followed by, okay, so this one we remember fondly, NASCAR Thunder 2002.
Sweet Home Alabama.
Yep. So this was the point where NASCAR games were like, this EA Sports games were like adding in these weird like subtitles. So the NASCAR series was renamed NASCAR Thunder 2002 to make it stand out, I guess, from like the Heat and racing series.
Yeah.
Developed by EA Tribune.
Yep.
And this one came out for the PlayStation, PlayStation 2, and Xbox.
Yep.
Now, this one is the one we grew up with. This one's also kind of sad because this was the first one after Dale Earnhardt passed away, sadly. And there was a big tribute to him on the front of, like, when you start the game up, the 3 appears. And it famously featured Sweet Home Alabama as its intro music.
Yep. And wasn't this the one where we could, like, design the cars?
You could design the car in most of them. We did a lot in this game, though.
Yeah, I remember that.
This is the one we played the hell out of.
We played this one so much.
You and your unsponsored Barney car.
Yeah, I always made like a green and purple car.
It was the Barney Mobile. And you'd always crash into the... My favorite was the replays after every race where, like, I'd be actually trying to race and you'd be just going into the wall.
Or, like, I would just drive backwards just to be annoying.
Yeah, like, you were, like, crazy into it.
And I believe that was one of those games, too, where, like, if the person, like, everyone had to finish... Like, it didn't just, like, end if you were that far behind. I remember, like, I had to finish all the races every time I messed around. I think it was this game.
I think you could turn it off. I remember playing the hell out of this one, though. This was one of probably my most memorable.
Yeah.
And then that was followed up by NASCAR Heat 2002.
Ooh.
Which was essentially an update of the original NASCAR Heat, and it was basically just re-released for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox.
Yeah.
And Game Boy Advance, but that's irrelevant.
No.
I've played it. It's crap. Now, Heat 2002 was pretty good. So it was definitely unlike the other one. The PS2 version was the definitive version.
Yeah.
It played very well. Like, I remember enjoying it. Like, it wasn't quite as realistic as NASCAR Racing.
Yeah.
But it definitely had more of a realism to it than Heat did.
Yeah.
I mean, than the EA games did. But it still wasn't quite like that definitive NASCAR game that we needed.
Yeah.
And following that, we got NASCAR Racing the 2002 season. Oh. So at this point, Papyrus stopped numbering them, and they now started naming them after the seasons they were based off of. So this one was the 2002 season.
Yeah.
And you can tell now we're getting different drivers are definitely changing, because now we got Kevin Harvick, who replaced Dale Earnhardt on the cover.
Yeah.
Along with like Terry Labonte in the Kellogg's car and the Dale Jarrett in the UPS car.
Yep.
He's going to drive the truck.
Yep.
One of my favorite, just a little off topic, but NASCAR commercials back in the day were amazing. Like the famous, like, Dale Jarrett's going to drive the UPS truck. A ton of them. Down, Ken Schrader, down.
Yep.
So many. Classic NASCAR. Michael Waltrip going to the wrong track. So many classics. And then following that, we got the next NASCAR Thunder game, which was 2003, which featured Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the cover.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he was young then.
That was... He's going with the mustache beard combo.
This was 2002.
Yep. I love how Jeff
Gordon's in the
background, like, hey, I'm here too.
Well,
Whee!
Jeff was arguably the best driver in the sport at the time.
I wish they put Jeff, like, in the corner, like, but he's, like, kind of like they Mike Wazowski'd him, where they, like, covered his face with the E for everyone.
See, they have to pay. They have to pay for that licensing, so that wouldn't go over.
No,
well.
but yeah, see, exactly. So, like, they wouldn't have to, because technically his face is covered, and they can be like, oh, that's just anyone's brown hair. That'd be funny.
Yeah, so this one was pretty good as well. I mean, it was the EA. So at this point, it was cool because all the NASCAR games were really good still.
Yeah.
Because every single one was putting in their full effort at the time. It felt like. Mm-hmm. And 2003, we played a good amount of. I always remember because it had like Magic Carpet Ride was like the main theme for this one.
Yep.
Along with Circles by Nonpoint was a big hit.
Yep.
At the time, we had this one too, and we played a good amount of it. This was also the beginning of the Dale Jr. era, where like he was the most popular driver in the sport.
Yep.
And then following that, now we get to quite possibly one of the most well-known NASCAR games of all time. That's still highly regarded even to this day. And this was NASCAR Dirt to Daytona, which was the final game in the Heat series at the time.
Yep.
And it was the final one to be released by Monster Games at the time. So Dirt to Daytona was cool because it took everything from the Heat series, but it added in like this whole like progression system, where you had to start out in like the dirt cars and like work your way up to like the truck series to like the Xfinity series to
that's cool.
to the Cup series. Like it had a progression system, very realistic for the time that like actual NASCAR drivers were involved with the development to give like their input. Yeah.
That's really cool.
It was a fun one. I really enjoyed this one back in the day. Like, this one, I think, still holds up if you can enjoy, like, a somewhat classic feeling racer.
Yep.
And it was then followed by... So this was a very important game in the NASCAR video game history.
Oh, really?
This was NASCAR Racing 2003 season, more commonly referred to these days as NR 2003. And this was, believe it or not, the final game to be released by Papyrus Design Group.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, they went out with a bang.
For one specific reason, which we will get to, probably after this.
Okay.
So this game was like the peak of NASCAR racing games. Like, this one was like well known as... Like, this game still has a very active community that still mods and maintains the servers.
Oh, wow.
To keep this game going because it is that popular. Like, they make new content for it. They're constantly making new tracks, new stuff. And the majority of the game's, like, fan base still regards this one incredibly well because it was just that solid.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, following this game's release, Electronic Arts didn't like the competition, so as they did similarly with Madden, they bought the exclusive rights to the NASCAR license.
Oh, no.
And killed off... That's why I mentioned, too, Monster Games' final entry and Papyrus's final entry. It essentially permanently killed off
any of
these series. Like, hard stop. Although Heat we'll get to later. But, yeah. But anyways, guys, before that, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Oh, shut up. No one believes you. Bullshit crying.
Bill punched me.
No one believes you. You're full of poo.
Give me fuel, give me fun, give me this. Sweet home Alabama.
Anyways,
Isn't that what one of them began with? Give me fuel, give me power.
no,
Or
you're
is that a Hot
you're
Wheels
thinking
game?
of Hot Wheels Turbo Racing.
Well, I thought
Which
there was
did
a NASCAR one that had one too.
I don't. Well, maybe I don't know. But anyway, so now moving on. So at this point, EA had exclusively gained the rights to NASCAR games,
Yep.
and they had essentially got a stranglehold monopoly on this genre.
Yep.
So the next game they released was NASCAR Thunder 2004, the final game to use the Thunder branding.
Yep.
And believe it or not, NASCAR Thunder 2004 is arguably EA's strongest game.
Oh, really?
Like, they put a lot of effort into this one. So NASCAR Thunder 2004, pretty much the same style. They added a couple more features. They did borrow some concepts from the Heat and Racing series, particularly allowing different custom drivers and like sponsorship stuff and different career modes and stuff. Basically, and also they added in some legend drivers like Richard Petty, who's available. Plus the Grudges and Alliances feature, where you could, like, depending on who you wrecked during races, they would either become a grudge or, like, an alliance kind of thing, which was an interesting feature. 2004 was definitely probably the peak of...
Tony Stewart looks like a dork on the cover, though. His mustache and the sunglasses are just so dorky.
that was the early 2000s, Alex.
The early 2000s is horrible. Oh my god.
Yep. But anyways, that one was then followed by Chase for the Cup, 2005, which was the first game to utilize the Nextel branding along with the controversial NASCAR Chase format.
Oh yeah, because I remember the next. It used to be the
It was the Winston Cup for years.
Winston Cup, and then it was the Nextel.
The Nextel Cup.
And then wasn't it the Sprint Cup?
Well, because Sprint bought out Nextel.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Chase for the Cup was. So this game was fine. I mean, now we had to deal with the Chase bullshit. But so interestingly enough, this game actually borrowed a ton of ideas from Dirt Daytona. Like, they borrowed the progression system. Like, this game famously started with, like, a street race where you'd, like, do, like, an unsanctioned, like, street race, and you'd get a call from Ryan Newman to join his late model team.
Yep.
And you'd have to work your way up from there, which was kind of fun. It was always funny how it was Ryan Newman at the time.
Yep.
But he was pretty at probably the height of his career at that time. So it made a lot of sense. The career mode was pretty cool, though, like, just, like, changing it up. And 05 was still at the strong point. It had online play. It was the first one, though, that did not release for original PlayStation. They dropped that system at this point, and they were just focusing on the 6th-gen systems. And then following that, they actually threw their hat at the PC ring again, this time with NASCAR Sim Racing, featuring Ryan Newman on the cover.
Newman.
Yeah, I had this one as well, and I could also never get it to work. I don't know what was with NASCAR games and computers that they never worked.
Well, you also had a really not great computer.
True.
Well, a computer that couldn't hit. Not that it wasn't great, Mom. We love the computers. It's the capabilities of the computers were not capable to beat the game.
They were potatoes. Let's be real.
But we love them, Mom, and we love you.
Yep. But moving on, then we get NASCAR 06 Total Team Control. And this one's big gimmick was it had Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson on the cover, a very young, awkward-looking Jimmy Johnson on the cover.
Yeah.
So this was based off the 05 seasons. This was before Jimmy's, like, championship run.
Yep.
But the whole gimmick with this one was the team aspect, where you would actually team up with certain drivers. And what's funny, too, is the different regions had different covers. Like, in the PAL region, it had Kurt Busch's 97 car on the cover. But, yeah, this one was still pretty okay. The team aspect was a little confusing, but it worked fine for what it was.
Yeah.
It was kind of a cool... At least they were trying at this point.
It was something different.
Yes. And then finally we get probably the most awkward entry in the series. We get NASCAR 07. So at this point they dropped the naming gimmicks and they just went straight up NASCAR 07.
They just were like, there's no competition now, so what
yeah.
does it matter?
So what's funny about this one is It features Elliot Sadler on the cover.
Who they just pick the worst pictures for all these
Well,
people.
they're stock photos, but
They're so bad.
what's funny, this is where it gets even funnier. What's funny is Elliot Sadler so this was 2006. The series this game was based off of. Elliot Sadler, by the time this game came out, wasn't even in the M&M's car anymore.
Oh, really?
He had jumped over to the 19 Air Force car, I think, at the time, and the M&M's car was driven by David Gilliland by this point.
Whoops.
So like he wasn't even. He also really at 2006. Elliot Sadler was basically like he existed, I guess.
Yeah.
He had already won the only 3 races he was going to win in his career. It was just such an odd choice for a cover athlete. And it also, interestingly enough, this game also came out on the PlayStation Portable, the lone NASCAR game to release for the handheld. And what made it really funny was, rather than having the 07, they just called it NASCAR. So it was the same exact cover and game, but it just said NASCAR on the cover for the PSP. And it featured a few different dynamic and variable like attributes for like this drivers, like, and you could like update the skills and stuff. Not the greatest NASCAR game, but it was solid enough. I mean, the PSP game alone is pretty fun just for the sake of having a PSP game.
Yeah.
And then now we get into the HD era with NASCAR 08.
Yep.
Once again featuring Tony Stewart on the cover.
Yep.
And so 08 was the first one to release on the
Is his car on fire in the photo?
No, he had just won a race and he was doing a burnout.
It looked like smoke, so I was like, is he on fire?
Well, Tony's nickname was Smoke, so.
Oh.
But yeah, so 08 was the first one to release for the PlayStation 3 and 360, and yeah, it was pretty rough, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, well, it was very clearly the first HD game, and it was also the first game to introduce the controversial Car of Tomorrow era of NASCAR. Yeah, this one was pretty meh. I actually had this one as a kid, and I always remember like it being very just kind of like not that fun. I remember I spent birthday money on it, and I was very disappointed at the time it came out. This is where you could really tell EA was losing interest in the license as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was getting very apparent. And then following this, we got NASCAR 09, which was once again featured Jeff on the cover. Somewhat oddly, the manufacturers didn't want to give they didn't want to give the licensing rights, so all the cars just don't have any like manufacturer logos on them. So this one was better than 08. They featured a lot of updates, like a better paint booth setups and stuff. And it played okay. The thing about this game, what made it interesting was this game had a massive online community.
Oh, really?
That was still active up until they closed the servers down. And I mean, it's funny because the games weren't even that good. They were just like, for whatever reason, I don't know, this game's like, just longevity went on very long. It's because it had a great online community.
Hey, I mean, sometimes that, makes the game. It's the community and the community aspect of the things.
But following this game's release, EA dropped the license entirely.
Oh.
And because they weren't selling well, and they just lost interest in the series by this point. So there was no 2010 game.
I was gonna say, I'm looking at it, I'm like, huh.
In 2010, NASCAR did have some video game representation, like they appeared in Gran Turismo 5, and it actually was Gran Turismo's NASCAR content was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like it was really well done. But eventually, the license for NASCAR games was shifted over to Activision, and the developer Eutechnyx, one of the more infamous developers in video game history. And they developed NASCAR The Game, 2011. The first entry in
the movie.
Yeah. It was the first entry in the NASCAR The Game series of racers. And I'm not going to lie, this game sucked really bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the car handling was horrendous.
Dang.
It had a great soundtrack. Like there was some pretty cool like alt rock on this one. But oh my god, this game controlled terrible. The Wii version particularly, but that's besides the point.
Huh.
Yeah, it was very clearly Technic's first attempt.
Yep.
I remember this game was super hyped too when it was coming out. Like all the NASCAR fans were like, "Finally, Activision's gonna actually care."
Yeah.
Little did they know.
Wah, wah,
Little did they know, all Activision was doing was handling the publishing, and basically everything was handled by Technics, who developed Ride the Hell Retribution, and yeah.
Yep.
But it was followed up by NASCAR the Game Inside Line, or later also released as NASCAR the Game 2013. So this one was very similar, but it was an improvement overall.
Oh, okay.
Control-wise, design-wise, better online structure.
Yep.
What's fun about this one is they did a poll, a poll for who was going to be the cover athlete, and very predictably, Dale Earnhardt Jr. won.
Yeah.
Because let's do a poll to NASCAR fans: who's going to be on the cover of the game? Who's the most popular driver in the sport? Yep. So Jr. was on the cover for NASCAR 2000 Inside Line.
Yeah, and it was well deserved.
And interesting, I believe this was actually his final cover appearance too.
Oh, really?
It's sad that this was during probably the worst period of his career,
Oh, womp womp.
where he was in the middle of a very long winless streak.
Yeah. It happens.
That does. But yeah, this game was definitely better. Like, it got a 76. I mean, that's not too bad. And then that was followed up by NASCAR 14.
Yep.
Which was essentially a continued improvement. Also, another Tony Stewart cover.
Yep.
Because he had won the championship right around that point. Or a couple of years earlier. Yeah, so he'd won the cover vote. This game did add some new features, like a new online infrastructure, some DNFs, enhanced car physics. The paint booth in particular was pretty cool. This one, though, wasn't nearly as well received as Inside Line.
No.
It kind of just felt like they just slapped paint on something that didn't need to be improved.
Oh.
And then following that, we got NASCAR 15, which was Jeff Gordon's final cover appearance. It was also his the year he retired from the sport, so it made sense they'd put Jeff on the cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Jeff. We'll miss you.
And this was also the final game to be developed by Technics and the final entry in the NASCAR the Game series. And then this one was essentially just it was pretty much NASCAR 14 but better.
Yep.
I did play a good amount of this one back in the day. It also had an updated version called NASCAR 15 Victory Edition, which just saw some additional added content. Plus, it was actually also the first one that allowed alcohol sponsorships in game.
Oh, really? There
was a code you could do, and it would replace all the because before this, the any of the drivers who had alcohol sponsorships, their names would just be replaced with the alcohol logos would be replaced with the driver names. So like the Bud Light would be replaced with Dale.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, or like Brad Keselowski's Miller car would just be replaced with Brad K. It was funny at the time, but yeah. So following 15, and after Technics lost the rights, the company was picked up by. So originally they were known as Doonesbury Martin Racing, and they later renamed themselves 704 Games.
Yep.
And they brought back the Heat series, including developer Monster Games with NASCAR Heat Evolution, featuring Carl Edwards on the cover.
Yeah.
Because for some reason they had so it was based off of like the Toyota had some sort of rights exclusivity to the cover.
Yep.
And it was basically whichever Toyota driver finished highest in the All-Star race that year, which happened to be Carl. Also, Carl oddly retired that year.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really weird. He abruptly like retired from the sport. So Heat Evolution is.
He hated that game so much. He was like, "Fuck this! I quit."
No. Also, here's the funny thing: Heat Evolution was pretty bad.
Oh, really?
But I am convinced that Heat Evolution was literally. They got the rights and they literally just kind of like finished it, and like the development time I swear wasn't very high. Because the game basically plays like old like Dirt to Daytona, and it has very little content. It's very mediocre.
Huh.
But it was followed up by Heat 2, which did see a lot of improvement because they added the lower series back, like Xfinity and Trucks.
Yep.
Once again, it was So this one was a bit controversial. It was they did another Toyota. The best finishing Toyota would be on the cover, so it ended up being Kyle Busch.
Yep.
The thing is, this was based off the 2017 season, and that was also Dale Jr.'s retirement year. So a lot of people were very butthurt that Dale Jr. wasn't on the cover.
Aww.
So this game, not amazing, but still pretty solid. Like it was definitely an improvement over the original Heat, and that would become kind of the trend for the Heat series, because then we'd get Heat 3,
Yep.
which notably saw all 4 Hendrick Motorsports drivers on the cover during probably the lowest point of Hendrick Motorsports history.
Oh, there's a $50 NASCAR ticket inside.
You know, I got 3 of those and I never used any of them.
Wah, wah, wah.
But yeah, this one also was a significant improvement over the predecessor,
Yep.
which was then followed up by Heat 4, featuring photoshopped Kevin Harvick on the cover.
Oh, wait, what? Let me see this.
His hair isn't that black in real life. They clearly.
That's funny.
There was also the Jeff Gordon Championship Edition, which had Jeff on the cover.
Why not?
Also, Tony's in the background because this was car owner Tony at the time. Heat 4 was legitimately pretty good. I really enjoyed Heat 4.
Nice.
And then, so then this is where it gets weird. Monster Games was abruptly fired
Oh.
after this, and they basically just 704 just took Heat 4 and just made an updated version called Heat 5.
Huh.
Um,
Womp womp.
which featured Chase Elliott on the cover.
Why did they kind of Photoshop his leg out? Oh, there's like a little square covering it. But you can kind of see in the background.
Yeah, it's...
But for a minute, it just like looked like... Why'd they do that?
So, believe it or not...
It looks like he's like just... It looks like they just chopped his legs off for some reason.
So what's funny about Heat 5 is this was a rare example of like the cover not cursing a driver's championship.
Oh, really?
Because Chase won the championship that year.
Oh, dang.
It was just funny. It like...
Lucky.
It didn't curse him. Tony was also on the cover of the gold edition, because they did another gold edition. Mm-hmm. So then this is where it gets even weirder. So they fired Monster Games abruptly, and then 704 Games was like abruptly taken over by this company called Motorsport Games, who took over the series and then hyped up this next game called NASCAR 21 Ignition. Like they hyped it up as they were finally gonna like actually do a whole lot. Like it was gonna be.
Bubba.
It was The cover was Bubba Wallace, Chase Elliott, and Ryan Blaney.
Sorry, I just love the name Bubba.
Hey, it's his name.
Yep.
They're probably 3 of the most popular drivers in the sport right now. But unfortunately, this game's a hot pile of garbage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like there's a lot of rumors that Motorsport Games is secretly a scam.
Oh,
Like,
really?
yeah, they fraud, like a whole bunch of fraud going on and stuff. I don't know enough about it to really say that, to say anymore, but I've seen a lot of really weird reports around the company.
Yep.
And this game was a hot garbage, and they still have done nothing to fix it.
Oh, wow.
Like, I own this game literally, I bought it after it'd been, like, price chopped multiple times.
Damn.
Unfortunately,
was I there with you when you bought it?
maybe? I don't know.
Because I thought I remembered you saying something like that. Like, this is a piece of shit.
You might have been. But, yeah, so, like, no reason to play this game. I'll say that right now. Like, it is so awful. And unfortunately, Motorsport Games owns the exclusive rights to make games for the next, like, 5 or 6 years.
Oh, no.
So we don't know, really, the future of NASCAR games.
Well, it's 2022, and they still haven't come out with something, so...
Apparently, they might not have a game at all.
Oh, damn.
Until 2023. We did get NASCAR Heat Ultimate, though, which was kind of cool.
Okay.
Which was essentially just a Switch port of Heat 5 with
Yep.
some updated like graphics. It was kind of funny. The Switch ended up initially everyone joked saying the Switch wasn't powerful enough to get 21, and that's why they just gave an updated version of Heat 5. But ironically, Heat 5 was the better game, so I think the Switch lucked out there. But since then, we don't know what's going on with future of NASCAR games. But what's fun is we can go into the side series of NASCAR,
Oh, boy.
which gave us some of our most amusing games ever.
Oh, boy.
So obviously, there was also a number of arcade, like casual, like style NASCAR games. The first of which we mentioned earlier, Bill Elliott's NASCAR Fast Tracks, which was just essentially a Game Boy Color arcade style NASCAR game that obviously wasn't going to do a whole lot.
Yep.
There was also NASCAR 3D Ultra Pinball,
Oh, fun.
which is just super goofy but kind of funny. It doesn't have a Wikipedia page, but there was also Trivial Pursuit NASCAR edition for the PC, which I do own.
Why not?
And it has mustacheless Dale Earnhardt on the cover, which is one of the most cursed images of all time.
No, he needs his mustache.
But now then we get into one of probably the greatest arcade NASCAR games ever made, NASCAR Rumble.
Give me fuel, give me fun.
No, So NASCAR Rumble is hilarious because it's literally the introduction film starts with them at the racetrack, and then they just break through the track wall and start racing off the track.
Yep.
Through like canyons and shit. It's literally just a Mario Kart NASCAR game.
Oh, that's funny.
And you can launch like tornadoes and shit and like rockets and stuff. It's like the most ridiculous NASCAR game ever made. Made by EA Redwood Shores, the same company that later made My Sims, and was later
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
was later known as Visceral Games and did the Dead Space games.
Yep.
This game is a blast. Like even like now, I'd always say like, give this one a shot if you see it. It's worth the money.
Yeah.
It's such a goofy like arcadey game. And then we were followed up by. So this is a game I desperately want to find an arcade cabinet for at some point. NASCAR Arcade. Not to be confused with like other NASCAR arcade games.
Yep.
This one, in particular, I want to play because it was made by Sega of all places. And it was based off of some of their Sega arcade hardware. But what makes this one very well known and like why I want to play it badly, is the soundtrack was 100% composed of Crush 40 songs.
Fuck yeah.
Like all those like those weird like racing themed ones.
Yep.
Those were all the themes of they were all the themes of the band.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was freaking sweet. But anyways, then we got NASCAR Racers. You remember that TV show?
No.
You don't remember NASCAR's cartoon?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay, well there was a
Did not know that existed.
PC and a Game Boy Color game based off of that, which was pretty funny.
Oh boy.
EA also had a NASCAR arcade game, which I actually have seen in public, and it is pretty cool. Then there was also another Days of Thunder like game that was made years later.
Yep.
But another fun one. So this game in particular is very well known because this was literally EA had lost the license. Well, no, they had one more game they had to make before they could get rid of the license, and they didn't want to make another full-on racer, so they decided to make NASCAR kart racing.
Why not?
Which is for the Wii, exclusively for the Wii, and it is literally just Mario Kart. Like, the drivers are literally, like, in, like, kart versions of their cars.
That's so goofy.
Me and you need to play this at some point, because it is hilarious.
Alright, we'll plan to
Well, we
play
need to
it.
stream it at some point if we ever get into streaming.
Yeah.
Also-
Let us know if that's something you want us to do. Yay!
This game was really funny, though. Like, it was such, like, a cash, like, just, like, we don't care about this anymore. We just want to get rid of it.
Yep.
So it was EA's final game. It was just funny. How little they cared.
Yeah. Well, they were just like, whatever.
And then there was also another Days of Thunder arcade style game, but the final real arcade style NASCAR game was during the Activision era, and this was NASCAR Unleashed.
Huh.
Which basically it was just another another attempt at like an arcade style. So like it was essentially the third follow up to like NASCAR Rumble, NASCAR Kart Racing, just like a arcadey style, like goofy, like non-realistic racing game.
Yep.
This one's okay. Not as good as Rumble. Probably better than kart racing.
Okay.
And other than that, like, there really isn't any other straight up NASCAR games. There's a ton of, like, racing simulation games which feature NASCAR as, like, additional content.
Yeah, like as add-ons to it, but not
Yeah.
in the game wasn't a NASCAR game.
Nah. And so other than that, like, it's really basically... The series is currently basically at the hand of whatever Motorsport Games is going to do.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it doesn't look great right now.
Oh.
Like, I've heard rumors that motorsport NASCAR themselves is trying to like get the license back from motorsport games
Yeah,
they're like
they're doing a shit job.
because they made a freaking dumpster fire of a game, and it's like NASCAR is on a rise right now, and they're really trying to get back into like the mainstream like attention, and releasing a shit video game is not going to help them, especially considering the inconsistency of NASCAR games over the past like decade.
Yeah.
Like, there was a good point where the NASCAR games were all pretty solid. There was also, ironically, I think it had to do with competition too, because there was 3 companies making the games.
Yeah.
And there was healthy competition, and it was basically pushing.
I mean, the thing is like in all aspects, competition pushes greatness sometimes. You know, I mean, as Dale Earnhardt said, you know, seconds is just the first person to lose. So
Did Dale say that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that's what he said. Second's just the first, because people would be like, "Oh, he came in second." He'd be like, "Second's the first person to lose." Like, no, it sucks.
What's funny though is, so Papyrus, after they went out of business, a lot of the former Papyrus staff went on to form the company iRacing, which is a very popular racing sim online now. And believe it or not, which actually has NASCAR content as well. And iRacing actually recently purchased Monster Games.
Oh.
So Monster Games is now under the iRacing banner. So the 2 outcasted NASCAR developers are currently working together. And hopefully we'll see something, like a new arcade, a PC NASCAR game, arcade-style NASCAR game. I don't know. It's up in the future. I mean, anything's better than what we got recently.
Yeah. Anything.
And I mean,
save the NASCAR game.
NASCAR's on the rise, and I'm hoping at some point I'll complete my NASCAR game collection, because I'd really like to share that at some point, that I went out of my way to do that.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, so I'm pretty sure that's about as far as we can go for now. This one was mostly purely indulgent on our part, but I felt like we needed to share.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if we'll do any other sports series in the future. I mean, because we just don't have... The only football game I have any, like, real experience with is, like, NFL 2K5.
Yeah.
And even then, that was just because it was a gift. But besides that, I think we're pretty good on this one.
Yeah.
So, anyways, guys, once again, thanks for joining us on the Gaming and Collecting Podcast. The Gaming and Collecting Podcast can be found on all your major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and you can also follow us on Good Pods. And the episodes do eventually come out on YouTube. It's probably going to be a bit at the moment, more on that later. But for now, once again, thanks for joining us, and we will see you all next time.
Woo!
All right, see you guys.
See you later.